as homeowners are trying to recover and they face an ominous specter of rising flood insurance premiums that threatens to force them out of their homes. They're facing a triple whammy. First, the storm came and devastated their lives. Then updated flood maps came online, and thank God for the intercession of a lot of us who said, wait a minute, these seem overly broad. I know from the New Jersey experience, we had V zones that were so wide, and then when we met through you and FEMA and others, we finally got those tailored to where their real V zones are, because that would have dramatically made it almost impossible for many owners in that property area to be able to recover. But then, you know, the third part of this is that they're seeing flood insurance premiums and their subsidies begin to rapidly displace. Now, I understand the necessity of making the flood insurance program fiscally solvent. I understand the challenges of repetitive loss properties. I get all of that, but what I don't get is creating a process that is so driven in the upfront part that ultimately puts at risk the essence of the very recovery for which we have spent enormous amounts of taxpayer dollars, and which have a consequence of taking middle-class families and making their home, which is their biggest savings in life, ultimately potentially vanish as a result of it and lose their values, because with those type of high flood insurance premiums, the resale value obviously is affected, which also affects property values within the overall community. So isn't it, and it'll be interesting, this committee, as one of its subcommittees, is having a hearing later on what is known as Biggert Waters and the reform that took place in flood insurance. And some of my colleagues who were the biggest advocates of saying there should be no subsidy by the federal government now are complaining. They're the ones who actually drove the situation in which we ended up with either a vote for something that at least sustained the flood insurance program versus killing the flood insurance program, which would have wreaked havoc in the real estate market and for homeowners. But they drove a circumstance that was, in my perspective, disproportionate in terms of the consequence to homeowners. And now they're complaining about it. I can't wait to go to that hearing. So, having said that, do you not agree that the lack of affordability for flood insurance programs can be a potential obstacle for recovery in community-wide levels?
There's no question that this has been one of the most critical issues that we've heard on the ground from homeowners, from small businesses, and then there is real and I think genuine concern about this issue. And I would really say there are three things that are critical for us to do here, Senator. One, we've got to proceed with the critical investments in elevating homes, making homes and businesses safer for the next storm, which not only will save lives, help communities, but also, frankly, lower substantially flood insurance rates. And that's obviously happening as part of the investments through the supplemental. Second, and this is something that you both made very clear points to me about over time, that too often this system is set up for communities that aren't urban. You know well the buildings you showed me in Hoboken that can't be elevated. The brownstone that I used to live in Brooklyn can't be elevated. And so one of the things that we are moving forward on, based on the task force recommendations and your input, is to give more credit in the flood insurance program. We're running a pilot to do this that's really looking at if you elevate your mechanical systems, if you flood-proof your home rather than elevating it, how do we recognize that better in the flood insurance program? So that's a second area. And then third, and this really, when Biggert Waters was passed, the administration in its statement about the bill said we should be providing affordability mechanisms that are not in the bill today. And we continue to believe, and you'll hear this, I'm sure, from Craig Fugate today, but we believe strongly, stated in the strategy, that we stand ready to work with Congress to find affordability provisions that will insulate those vulnerable families, low and moderate income families who simply cannot afford these from the worst impacts of that. That's something that Congress ought to do quickly because, as you rightly said, as these new flood maps are going into effect, it will start to have these impacts right away.
Yeah, well, the affordability question is an essential question for recovery and for preservation of homes, as well as for real estate issues overall.